Hey there, I'm author Sarah A. Chrisman, and today I'm going to talk to you about antique magazines and how they are a window into the past. We read a lot of magazines from the 19th century, and these are a wonderful source of information and advice. And this is advice that we wind up using when we deal with historical artifacts. It's also a lot of information that I use when I write my books. This is a slightly beat up manuscript for the book that I'm currently writing. And if you've been following me, you know that I write all my manuscripts by hand, so as I'm reading the antique magazines, I will take notes in the back of my notebooks and then write them from the front on. But these magazines are really a window into the past, and this is how people in the 19th century were getting advice on things like how to clean lamps, which if you watched my last video, that was about how to get the most light out of an oil lamp, and everything I said in that video was pretty much out of these antique magazines. And so if you want to know more about things from the past, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, because people were writing about these things 100 years ago, and you don't have to go to a source that may or may not be accurate. You can just go straight to the horse's mouth and get it that way.
And magazines were very much for the everyday type of writing and reading for people in the past. You know, you won't find these things in sort of high literature of the day, a lot of the books that people might associate with the Victorian era now. Those ones, honestly, didn't give you a lot of details about everyday life.
Right.
But the magazines are different. The magazines were ephemeral. They were not intended to last for the ages, but they were where you found advice on current technologies for the time. They were things where you'd find methods, you know, just everyday stuff. And it wasn't written to be high literature. It was written to just be everyday. And that is very different from what you get from Wuthering Heights.
Right. And Wuthering Heights isn't going to tell you how to bake a cake. It's not going to tell you how to clean your glassware. But the magazines will, and they'll just give you lots of little windows into the past. And this one I have here, I really like Good Housekeeping, because that's a lot of the nuts and bolts. That's a lot of just regular women writing in to say, okay, what are some amusements I can play with my children? What is... Hi, Diana.
Come on up.
Don't
go there.
What is some advice for my children? That's another thing you would find in Good Housekeeping. And this particular one is fun because this is the menfolk edition, which it says right across the top. So they've really dumbed things down for the menfolk. There are recipes in here for things like graham gems, which was considered basically the easiest biscuit to possibly make. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah. What were some of the other magazines that you suggest besides Good Housekeeping?
Well, Good Housekeeping is one of my favorites, and Diana's keeping me from moving around. But Harper's is another really good one. Good Housekeeping will give you the nuts and bolts. Harper's gives you a little broader view, and so that one's got articles on things like, there's a boosterism piece in there on Port Townsend, which I used in writing my Tales of Chetzemoka, because that gives an overview of the town. And there are boosterism pieces for all the western towns that were opening up. So if you look up your town in Harper's, chances are, if you live in the American West, there was probably a boosterism article about it in Harper's at some point. Right. And another favorite is Goodies. Goodies did all the fashion pieces. So it's got beautiful color illustrations and black and white illustrations. And that's advice for what dresses women were wearing, say in 1883. if you are trying to make a dress that looks like it's from that time, or if you're writing about that time, or you just want to know about it and you want to be that specific to that year, you just go to goodies for that year.
And one thing you'll find, just like now, the magazines all had their particular audience and their particular angle. And so certain magazines are more sort of middle class, some of them are more working class, some of them are more upper class. And you really can sort of narrow in on exactly the type and part of society that you want to learn about through that.
Yeah, and if you can reach that one for me so I don't disturb my cat.
This one here?
Yes, that one.
Right.
The Ladies' Home Journal was another popular one. This one was specifically for the more religious set. So they run a series in here called The King's Daughters that is basically how to live a Christian life, essentially, which you would be hard-pressed to find in a lot of modern magazines, and it's an interesting view into the culture.
The other wonderful thing is, of course, all of these, if you can find them in original editions or reprints that preserve them, all have the advertisements. And it's also especially interesting to see which advertisements were targeted at which markets. And so that's another little window into how things were done and what was going on. And just the everyday life, the sorts of things that were being marketed to you. As an American, you probably know that what is being marketed to you is very definitional for who you are.
What are some of the examples on the back there?
Oh, some of the examples here, we have face powder, we have a parlor organ, we have Burpee's seeds, those are still around.
We have the Janice Miller model bodice.
Yes.
Bring that close to the camera so you can see it.
Yes, you
It's
can
quite
see
lovely.
that example there. Yes.
And the advertisements really give you some good insights into what was in people's minds, what they were looking at, what they were buying, and what they were being sold. And that really tells you a lot about the people involved.
And it makes it much easier for her to write about them and get details right and accurate and have a feel for the history. And then also it gives us ideas of how to handle all these things in our daily lives as we try to learn more about the past.
Absolutely. So, I hope you take the effort to find some of these old magazines and learn more about the people that fascinate us so much. You can find a lot of antique magazines in antique stores and online, of course. eBay has a lot of them. If you're looking for a reprint, then Google Books, the advanced search, not just the regular Google Books, but the Google Books advanced search, you can find some files there that you can reprint on your own. And there's another video that we did that shows you, it actually goes through and shows you how to do that. And a lot of magazines dramatically changed their tone over time, and they changed the audience they were going for. One of my favorite examples of that is the Cosmopolitan, which in the 1890s was a very serious magazine, and it was discussing really important topics of the time. In the 1890s, at one point they ran a series examining different elements of life and asking, are they a failure or are they a success? And one of my favorite quotes comes out of that series. It's actually a quote I included in my Commonplace book, but it's from the Cosmopolitan. And it goes, excuse me, "We think the age in which we live is the age, that the people among whom we move are the favored of the earth, that our ways are the best, that our methods are the nearest allied to those of omniscience, that the crisis we face is the most momentous. As a matter of fact, crises are as regular in the history of nations as the rising of the sun and the going down thereof."
Wonderful argument against presentism.
Yes, yes. And that was actually in a piece called A Few Facts About Elections from the Cosmopolitan in November of 1888. And I just love that it gives us perspective on things. And some other articles that Cosmopolitan were running in the 1890s, they ran articles written by Frederick Douglass, the famous abolitionist. And it's quite different from the tone of Cosmopolitan these days. And
different intended audience as well.
Different intended audience. There was another magazine in the 19th century that was very popular called the Youth's Home Companion. And I showed you the Ladies' Home Journal, which was the very Christian one. The Youth's Home Companion was, if you've read Little Women there's a bit where Jo is writing for a magazine for children, but she's writing these sort of over-the-top pirate adventures that Professor Bear is sort of scandalized by because he thinks that they're too rough for children, and that was basically the Youth's Home Companion.
Right.
Alcott didn't come right out and name the magazine in her book, but it's basically what she was talking about.
All these magazines were part of this explosion of print, and especially cheap print things that were becoming available in the late 19th century that just brought literacy into everyone's homes, and that made there was a targeted, if you were any particular person in America, there was a targeted magazine that was directed exactly at you, and that had advertising targeted exactly at you. This is exactly how the whole culture sort of defined themselves, as what they read.
Right, and that was made possible by the advent of wood pulp paper, which made books and magazines much, much cheaper than they ever had been. And
increasingly automated printing systems, too.
Right, but the important takeaway for us today is that no matter who you are or what you're interested in, there is a 19th century magazine out there for you.
Yes, there's plenty of wonderful 19th century cycling magazines and plenty of things for outdoor enthusiasts. And
if you like to sew, there are magazines on that. And even if you have an interest that's as modern as, say, video games, well, look up some of the amusements of the 19th century. Look at some of the parlor games. And there's something for everybody. And I hope you'll look into it. And of course, I hope you'll get my books, too.
Look at this key. Yes.
Thank you for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a nice thumbs up. Remember to share it and encourage your friends to subscribe, but remember above all to tell your friends about my books. Happy reading!